Hi gang, Piano Man Steve Lungrin here. I'm doing a little free supplemental video right now because I want to address an issue that I've had a lot of my students talk to me about. A lot of my videos talk specifically about how to create pace in your music. And one of the best ways to do that is to free up your left hand from complicated stuff and just play octaves, but use it on a rhythm that kind of mirrors, say, like a rock drummer, like the kick drum of a drum kit. So you do this kind of thing a lot. Now, it's not the most complicated line in the world, but when you play over the top of it, see, that creates a tremendous amount of pace. It makes it sound like you've kind of got like a whole band playing, as opposed to a lot of times we've got folks that come out and do really complicated things with their hands, and they're brilliant players. I'm not taking anything away from their skill, but they're busy going. And the problem is that they're doing all this cool stuff with their left hand, but the song is suffering because there's no pace, there's no flow. It feels stripped down and empty. Because you can do, when you have a band playing and you've got a bass guitarist who is basically going dum 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 and mirroring the kick drum, and you have a drummer doing his thing, you know, going. Then you can basically focus in on doing a lot of frilly things, and you kind of leave your left hand out of it, and it can be cool because it doesn't lose that sense of pace. But when you're playing by yourself and you just try to get busy, a lot of times you lose the hook, you lose that rock solid foundation that everything's hanging on to. So that's why I teach it. Having said all that, I've got some folks who are struggling with, they're struggling playing the octaves. And basically anyone who's struggling to play octaves is probably dealing with one basic issue, and that is that their hand is not adequately stretched yet to play octaves. Some of us have bigger hands than others, but anyone's hand is big enough to play an octave. And I'm here to give some techniques, some exercises that you can do to help make it better for you, help make it easier for you to play these accurately. First and foremost, I would take the right hand off the table and I would just focus in on the left hand and play it by itself for a while. I think that one mistake I see a lot of people do is that, particularly the folks with smaller hands, is that they're up here on the piano too much. And if you have a smaller hand, it's really hard to reach, and so you end up doing this a lot. See? Playing a major seventh, which sounds awful, as opposed to this, which is what you're trying to do. Okay? So what I would recommend is I would move your hand back so that you're touching the tips of the keys rather than the meat of the keys up here. Okay? Because then if you have a smaller hand, you can still reach it easier on the perimeter than you can. The farther you get in, the longer you kind of have to stretch your hand out to hit that note. But you have a little more leeway playing the inner corners. So move your hand out and away a little bit and think more about playing on the edge as opposed to up here. That's the first thing I would do. And secondly, if your hand is in fact, if it feels like a real stretch for you to get from here to here, start by playing here and just go into some what I call karate chops on the keys. Just 1, 2, thumb, 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 thumb. So start on a fifth, like C and G, and do a few rounds, and then switch up to a sixth. Then switch to a seventh. Now jump to the octave. then back to the 7th, then back to the 6th, then back to the 5. And I would go back and forth through that cycle a few times. You don't have to do it a ton, but what this does is it kind of helps you warm up the muscle rather than coming here and going, if it's already a big stretch for you. Ease into it and then bring it back down so you don't strain it, and then come back to it and ease in. There you go. Also, like I said, keep your focus off the right hand for right now. Get your left hand comfortable playing octaves so that you can trust it. Because what you're going to want to do, remember, your right hand is your flavor hand. So you're going to want to be able to focus on it. You want to be able to turn your left hand on autopilot. So take the time you need to get your hand comfortable with that interval. Because you have to be on octaves a lot. Okay, now, so you can do that to help warm your hand up. Do that a few times, and then from here, I would stay on that. Once your hand is warmed up, get into your octaves, and I would stay on that 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, and then just start moving up. You don't want to do this like I'm doing. I'm just trying to make sure you can see what I'm up to, but you want to put your hand out like so. And just kind of work your way up the scale if you want to. You can play the black notes too. Now this is a piece of technique I have to tell you. I'm going to leave this up to you and what feels right to your hands. Most piano teachers are going to tell you that when you go to a black key, the proper technique, if you're going to go to black keys and octaves, is to use your 4th finger rather than your pinky, along with your thumb. See? Now I find that I do that sometimes, and sometimes I still use my pinky. I do think that it can be useful to use that technique when you go to the black keys. But it's a little bit more choppy usually. It's harder to get as smooth on those kinds of runs, but I don't know in the kind of music that we're talking about that it necessarily matters that much. So I tend to use that technique when I'm doing a run that requires me to be a little more smooth, like that, if I'm going to go. But if I'm just like so, I tend to use my pinky. So it's really up to you, but if you want to, you can use that technique, or you can just use your pinky thumb, whatever feels right to your hand. I'm not here to tell you what's the right way and the wrong way, but that is what you'll be taught by most piano teachers when you go to an octave. Same thing up here when you're playing octaves, they'll advise you to go like that, as opposed to like that. So that's my next thing, is once your hand is warmed up from doing the 5, 6, 7 octave, 7, 6, 5, 6, 7 octave thing, just work your way up. Black keys if you want, but white keys are fine, because you're just trying to get your hand comfortable being in that position, stretched out, playing octaves. Work your way up and down as much as you want. If you really want a good workout, then play octaves in your right hand with it and go. If you really want to get, and this will make your wrists pretty tired actually, is go 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a... Okay, so do that. I would take as much time as you need with your left hand only. If you want to work on it with your right hand, that's fine, but get your left hand comfortable with this. It is so important to be able to play octaves if you're going to do the kind of music that I teach. So just get your hand comfortable with that interval. And the other thing I want to advise you to do a little, take a break. Do a little, take a break. Don't spend 3 hours doing this, because if your hand is stiff, playing octaves the way it stretches your hand out in this particular way, it'll make your thumb really, really tight, and it can really start to restrict your wrist here, okay? So it's important when you are done, stretch your hands like this. I'm even going to put out a little video at some point of some basic stretches that you can do that are good for your wrists and your extensors. And if you work particularly hard and your hand feels sore, I would even recommend icing it just a little bit. That'll help cool things off. You don't have to, but you want to be careful not to overdo it on this. You know, octaves, if they're a stretch for you, they're a stretch for a reason. So give yourself a chance to ease into it. Don't try and force yourself to be an octave player right out of the chute. And in the meantime, if you're really struggling with it in your repertoire that you're practicing, you know, omit the octave and just play down here on your pinky. Just play one note at a time. There's no reason why, if you were trying to go for this, there's nothing wrong with doing this. It's just single notes. That'll work just fine, but if you want to thicken it up, you'll want to go to the octaves at some point. So give yourself a chance to ease into it. You can continue working on your repertoire. Just skip the octaves and play a single note down here, okay? So that's my recommendation. I hope that you find it helpful, and I'll see you on the next one, gang. Thanks. Bye-bye.